Dr. Rice hunched over her console, dark circles under her eyes betraying 3 sleepless nights since the first Galari transmission. The holographic display above her workstation pulsed with crystalline patterns as she refined the translation algorithm. "They're getting more desperate," she muttered to her assistant, Dr. Patel, as a new message streamed across the screen. The mathematical distress markers are increasing in frequency. Outside the glass-walled laboratory, the usually quiet NASA facility had transformed into an impromptu command center. Military personnel, government officials, and scientists from 24 countries moved with urgent purpose through halls typically reserved for methodical research. Dr. Rice adjusted her neural interface and projected the latest translation onto the main screen. Ambassador Zen is requesting direct video communication. They've sent protocols for adapting our systems to their visual spectrum. General Hammond, the stern Air Force officer assigned to oversee first contact security, frowned. "Denied. Text communication only until we establish clearer threat assessment." Dr. Rice stood, her petite frame somehow imposing as she faced the much taller officer. "With respect, General, every hour we delay might cost billions of alien lives. Their star system is collapsing into what they call a nexus storm, something beyond our current astrophysical understanding. They've already lost 2 outer planets." "All the more reason for caution," Hammond countered. "Desperate species take desperate measures. For all we know, this nexus storm could be a convenient fiction." President Ortiz, who had been silently observing from the corner of the room, finally spoke. "Dr. Rice, what's your assessment? Not the scientific one. Your gut feeling." Rice hesitated, aware that her next words might shape humanity's first interstellar relationship. They could have approached us with deception, claimed to be powerful benefactors offering technological gifts. Instead, they came showing vulnerability and need. That requires courage, and perhaps respect. The president nodded thoughtfully. "Established video communication, but on an isolated system with full monitoring." 30 minutes later, the laboratory fell silent as the main screen flickered to life. Ambassador Zin appeared, a crystalline entity that resembled a complex geometric structure constantly shifting within itself, glowing with internal light that changed hue as they spoke. "Gratitude for accepting direct communication," came the translated voice, oddly melodic despite its artificial origin. "Our calculations predicted only a 31.7% probability you would grant this request." Dr. Rice stepped forward. "We have many questions, Ambassador. Our astronomers cannot detect this nexus storm you describe, and your technology is centuries beyond ours. Why seek our help?" The crystalline form pulsed with deep indigo light. "The nexus storm exists partially outside conventional spacetime, which explains why your instruments cannot detect it. As for why we approach Earth," the alien paused, geometric patterns rearranging in what seemed like hesitation. "We have observed your species for 7 of your centuries. While technologically limited, humans possess something the Galari cannot replicate: adaptive conceptual innovation under extreme constraints. You call it thinking outside the box. Our species evolved toward perfect efficiency through logical progression. But the nexus storm defies logical solutions." A series of holographic images appeared, showing human achievements throughout history. The pyramids, Roman aqueducts, the moon landing, underground cities, sea reclamation projects. Your species routinely accomplishes what probability deems impossible. The nexus storm will reach our homeworld in 30 Earth days. Conventional evacuation could save perhaps 2% of our population of 9 billion. But if humans apply their unique cognitive approach to our crisis, Ambassador Zin's form expanded slightly, colors shifting to a hopeful azure. "You might discover possibilities our minds cannot conceive. Will you help us, Dr. Rice? Will humanity help the Galari?" Before Rice could respond, the facility's alarms blared. The chief astronomer burst into the room, face pale with shock. "We've detected it," he gasped. "The nexus storm. It's real. and it's expanding toward our sector of the galaxy. The Security Council chamber fell into stunned silence after Sofia Mbiki's impassioned speech. The 17-year-old activist stood resolute, her hands gripping the podium as camera flashes illuminated her determined face. Secretary General Okafor cleared her throat. "Thank you, Ms. Mbeki, for that unexpected perspective." Representative Lai's expression remained unreadable as he exchanged glances with the Russian delegate across the table. "Idealism is admirable in youth," he said finally, "but we must consider practical realities. The Galari request would require resources beyond anything humanity has ever mobilized." The American representative leaned forward. "Our scientific community is divided. Some view this as the opportunity of a millennium. Direct access to advanced alien technology. Others see potential extinction if we miscalculate. Outside the United Nations, the global response fractured along unexpected lines. Religious communities worldwide held vigils for the Galari, while secular think tanks debated the ethics of intervention. Social media exploded with hashtags ranging from #Welcome Galari to #EarthFirst. In Tokyo, 10,000 people formed a human chain spelling, "Healthy them," visible from orbit. In her makeshift office adjoining the Security Council chamber, Dr. Rice received a priority communication from Ambassador Zen. The crystalline being's colors had darkened to deep burgundy, an indication of extreme distress, according to their emerging understanding of Galari emotional expression. "Our evacuation preparations encounter difficulties," Zen communicated. "The Nexus storm's outer bands have accelerated, damaging our orbital shipyards. Without assistance, our estimated survival rate drops to 0.7% of population." Dr. Reyes felt the weight of billions of alien lives pressing upon her. "Ambassador, the United Nations requires more time. Humanity has never faced a decision of this magnitude before." "Time," replied Zen, "is precisely what we lack." The alien's crystalline structure pulsed rapidly. "We have prepared data transmission packets containing our full technological database as a gesture of trust. We will transmit regardless of your decision." "That's extraordinarily generous," Rice said, stunned by the implications. "It is logical," Zen corrected. "If we perish, our knowledge should not be lost. And if the Nexus storm eventually threatens Earth, as our models predict, this information may help your species survive." Back in the council chamber, the debate had devolved into procedural arguments when Sofia Mbiki unexpectedly received a message on her tablet. Her eyes widened as she scanned the content, a simplified version of the Galari technological offering, sent directly to her by Dr. Rice with the ambassador's permission. Without waiting for recognition, Sofia stood again. "Honorable representatives, while you debate, the Galari have already decided to share their entire technological database with humanity, regardless of whether we help them or not." She held up her tablet, displaying complex schematics that even the most advanced human scientists would need years to fully comprehend. "They're giving us the stars," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent chamber, asking only for a chance to see them again. Russian Representative Petrov removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. "If what the girl says is true, the balance of global power could shift overnight depending on who controls this information. It's being broadcast globally," Sofia countered. "The Galari don't understand our political divisions. They see one human species." Secretary General Okafor's phone buzzed with urgent messages as reports flooded in of spontaneous pro-Galari demonstrations erupting in major cities worldwide. In Beijing, Moscow, New York, and Rio, millions took to the streets carrying improvised banners with the same message: "Humanity answers." "It appears," Okafor said quietly, "that the people may have made this decision for us." The chamber doors burst open as an aide rushed in, face pale with urgency. "Madam Secretary General," he gasped, "multiple private aerospace companies have just announced independent rescue initiatives. They're mobilizing resources without waiting for UN authorization. Rohan Kapoor's private research campus outside Bangalore had transformed overnight. What was once a carefully controlled tech incubator now resembled an international science fair crossed with a refugee camp. Engineers slept under desks, scientists from competing institutions shared equipment, and massive holographic displays flickered with gallery schematics that seemed to defy basic physics. "This can't possibly work," muttered Dr. Abrams, MIT's quantum propulsion expert, staring at Jackson Chen's makeshift prototype. The retired NASA engineer had constructed it largely from repurposed satellite components and experimental materials. "That's what they said about the Wright brothers," Chen replied without looking up from his calibrations. His weathered hands moved with surprising precision for a man in his 70s. "The gallery approach is too conservative. They need human recklessness." Across the sprawling campus, 12-year-old Amara Karoma sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by discarded calculation sheets. Her eyes were closed in concentration, fingers tracing invisible patterns in the air. Two Galari scientists, present via holographic projection, observed with what translated as confused fascination. "The child has no formal training in quantum mathematics," one communicated to Ambassador Zen, who monitored the collaboration remotely. "Yet she visualizes multidimensional algorithms our most advanced systems cannot process." "Explain your methodology," Amara requested the second Galari scientist. The girl opened her eyes, revealing a gaze of surprising intensity. "I see numbers as colors and shapes that dance together. When they're happy, the equation works." She pointed to a complex formula that had stumped the research team for days. "This part is sad because it's lonely. It needs a friend here and here." She sketched additional variables that shouldn't have made sense, but somehow balanced the equation perfectly. Ambassador Zen's crystalline form shimmered with new patterns as they observed the exchange. Human intuition remained statistically unpredictable, they noted to Dr. Reyes, who had arrived to coordinate between government resources and the volunteer effort. "Our species evolved toward mathematical precision over millions of years. Yet this child, with minimal education, perceives solutions our most advanced minds cannot." "That's humanity's secret weapon," Reyes replied. "We're gloriously inefficient. We take wrong turns. We dream impossible things. Sometimes that's exactly what's needed." In the main hangar, Kapoor was engaged in heated debate with representatives from 3 competing aerospace companies who had arrived with resources and personnel. "Proprietary concerns are irrelevant now," he insisted, dark eyes flashing with intensity. "Humanity's first interstellar rescue mission will be open source, or it won't happen at all." Surprisingly, it was the notoriously secretive founder of MarsX who broke the tension. "My lawyers will have collective heart attacks," she said with a wry smile. "But Mr. Kapoor is right. History won't remember our quarterly profits. It will remember whether we saved a civilization." She laid her company access cards on the table. "Full schematics, manufacturing capacity, launch facilities. They're yours." By sunset, Operation Impossible Dawn had established 24 global research hubs, each tackling different aspects of the rescue technology. Traditional scientific hierarchies dissolved as breakthroughs came from unexpected sources. A high school robotics team in Seoul solved a critical navigation problem, while an indigenous community in Australia provided unique insights into the Galari's crystalline biology based on their understanding of desert minerals. Ambassador Zen observed all this with increasing puzzlement. "Your species' approach defies all organizational logic," they communicated to Dr. Reyes as they monitored global progress. "There is no central authority, minimal standardization, and your methodologies appear chaotic. Yet your progress exceeds our most optimistic projections by 43%. We call it organized chaos," Reyes replied. "It's how humans operate at our best." A sudden commotion erupted near Chen's prototype. The assembled engineers stepped back as the device emitted an unexpected pulse of blue-white energy, briefly creating what appeared to be a miniature fold in spacetime. It worked. Chen asked, looking as surprised as everyone else. Amara, who had wandered over to observe, smiled with complete confidence. The numbers are dancing now. They're very happy. The Australian outback shimmered with heat as emergency crews sifted through the wreckage of the research facility. Scorched equipment and melted alloys spread across the red earth like fallen meteorites. Dr. Thomas Wagner stared at the devastation, his weathered face expressionless, save for a slight twitching at the corner of his mouth. Complete structural failure, reported Dr. Takahashi, brushing ash from her tablet. The power containment couldn't handle the quantum fluctuations. She hesitated before adding, 3 researchers were injured, but they'll recover. Wagner nodded silently, then turned to the holographic presence of Ambassador Zin. I assume you'll be redirecting resources to more promising approaches now. The crystalline alien shifted colors, displaying what the human team had come to recognize as confusion. Clarify. This was your 4th catastrophic failure. Our probability models indicate continued pursuit of this methodology has less than 0.1% chance of success within required timeframe. Wagner unexpectedly laughed, a sound that startled even his human colleagues. Only 0.1%. Better odds than I thought. He gestured to Takahashi's tablet. Send the telemetry data to teams in Norway and Japan. I want 3 independent redesigns by morning. The Galari scientist accompanying Ambassador Zin emitted patterns suggesting profound puzzlement. Your equipment is irreparably damaged. Your theoretical foundation appears fundamentally flawed, yet you persist without significant probability of success. That's the part you still don't understand about us, Wagner replied, crouching to examine a twisted piece of metal that had once been part of the quantum focusing array. Humans have a peculiar relationship with probability. We tend to ignore it when it doesn't suit us. Back at the Coordination Center in Geneva, Dr. Rice monitored progress reports from the various teams worldwide. The news from Australia had hit morale, but surprisingly, not as hard as she'd feared. 3 new design approaches had already been uploaded to the global database, each addressing the power containment problem from radically different angles. How do they do it? Asked a Galari scientist observing nearby. After such a definitive failure, our researchers would require minimum 4.7 cycles for psychological recovery and reassessment. Reyes considered this as she watched the activity levels across the global network actually intensify rather than diminish. Humans have evolved with failure as our constant companion. We expect it as part of any worthwhile process. Her secure line chimed with an incoming call from Japan. Dr. Takahashi's face appeared, streaked with soot but animated with excitement. Elena, we've been thinking about this all wrong. What if instead of one massive power source, we distributed the load across thousands of smaller units, like how birds fly in formation to reduce individual energy expenditure? The infrastructure requirements would be enormous, Rice countered, though she was already running simulations. We don't build new infrastructure, Takahashi insisted. We use what already exists. Power grids, satellite networks, even personal devices linked through specialized quantum entanglement. The Galari mathematics makes it possible if we just approach it as a network rather than a singular entity, Rice finished, seeing where the idea led. That's brilliant, Hannah. In Norway, Wagner received the new concept while still at the Australian disaster site. He stared at the equations forming on his portable display, a slow smile spreading across his face. Of course, he murmured. We can't force reality to bend to our will with brute force. We have to invite it to dance with us instead. He looked up at the star-filled outback sky, where somewhere beyond, the Nexus storm continued its implacable advance toward the Galari homeworld. Ambassador, he called to Zin's hovering presence. Remember when you asked how humans maintain hope despite failures? The alien's crystalline form pulsed with attentive blue light. This is how, Wagner said, holding up the display with the new distributed power concept. We don't just try again. We try differently. And sometimes, Failure teaches us exactly what we needed to know. Secretary General Okafor stood on the United Nations headquarters rooftop, gazing across the New York skyline where buildings glowed with purpose in the evening light. Behind her, Ambassador Zin's crystalline form shimmered against the darkening sky. "I have never witnessed anything like this," the Galari admitted, gesturing toward the city. "Moscow and Beijing have opened classified research facilities to Western scientists. Nations with active border conflicts share resources without hesitation. Religious leaders who disagree on fundamental cosmic truths stand united in purpose." Okafor smiled faintly. "We can be remarkable when we choose to be." Her secure tablet displayed real-time updates from around the globe. In India, rural villages volunteered their solar arrays for the distributed power grid. Brazilian rainforest conservation teams offered their atmospheric monitoring stations. Even North Korea had quietly made its quantum computing resources available through Chinese intermediaries. "Your civilization's history suggested this outcome was highly improbable," continued Zen. "Human societies typically prioritize competitive advantage over cooperative survival. Perhaps we needed something bigger than our differences," Okafor replied. "Something that reminds us we're more alike than different." Across the Atlantic, in London's Piccadilly Circus, thousands gathered for what had become a nightly ritual. As darkness fell, people held up their phones with a specialized app developed by university students. Each device became part of a vast, distributed computing network, contributing processing power to simulate quantum interactions for the Mirror Project. Children sat on parents' shoulders, watching massive screens displaying a real-time visualization of the quantum mirror's development. A countdown clock showed 8 days remaining before the Nexus storm reached the Galari homeworld. Similar gatherings occurred in town squares and public spaces worldwide. In Nairobi, an impromptu choir performed songs composed specifically for the Galari, incorporating mathematical patterns into the melodies. In Tokyo, thousands of paper cranes folded with circuitry patterns formed a massive art installation representing the distributed power system. In her Geneva office, Dr. Reyes received the final merged design for the quantum mirror, containing elements from nearly every nation on Earth: Russian theoretical physics, American computational modeling, Chinese materials science, Kenyan network optimization, Brazilian environmental adaptation systems, all seamlessly integrated into a single coherent design. "It shouldn't work," muttered her assistant, scrolling through the specifications. "The components were never designed to function together. We're combining technologies that developed along completely different paths." "That's exactly why it will work," Rice countered. "We're not limited by a single perspective or development history." The Galari evolved toward perfect efficiency along one technological path. Humans explored thousands of divergent paths simultaneously. She transferred the final design to the Galari scientists for review. Within minutes, she received their response, a message containing only mathematical symbols that translated roughly to "functionally impossible." Reyes was preparing a defense of the design when her screen lit up with unexpected news. A team in Singapore had constructed a miniaturized version of the system using the final design parameters. Against all Galari predictions, it had successfully generated a stable pocket dimension for 3.7 seconds. Ambassador Zin's message arrived seconds later. "We withdraw our objection. Implementation will proceed." As the news spread, celebrations erupted across global coordination centers. In the Australian outback, where the catastrophic failure had occurred just days before, Dr. Wagner watched the test results with quiet satisfaction. "What will you do after this is over?" asked Dr. Takahashi, who had joined him to oversee the construction of one of the 17 primary nodes. Wagner gazed at the horizon, where massive construction vehicles were already preparing the ground for the node installation. "First, we save the Galari," he said. "Then we ask them to help us understand what else we've been told is impossible." Overhead, the stars seemed particularly bright, as though the universe itself were watching humanity's improbable symphony with newfound interest. Paulo Ribeiro hadn't slept in 36 hours. The Brazilian systems engineer's office in the Geneva Coordination Center had become a war room, screens displaying the ongoing cyber assault against quantum mirror facilities worldwide. Coffee cups and energy drink cans littered his desk as his fingers flew across multiple keyboards. "They're adapting faster than we can patch," called out his security team leader. "The Void Collective has recruitment cells in at least 27 countries. These aren't amateur hackers. They are using advanced quantum algorithms to penetrate our firewalls." Ribeiro paused momentarily, studying an unusual pattern in the attack sequence. "Wait," he murmured. "Something's not right. Look at the entanglement signatures." He isolated a data stream, eyes widening as he recognized what he was seeing. "They're not just trying to destroy our systems. They're trying to establish quantum connections between the nodes." His colleague frowned. "Why would they link the very systems they're trying to disable?" "Because they don't fully understand what they're attacking," Ribeiro replied, excitement building in his voice. "They think they're establishing backdoors, but what they're actually doing." He spun in his chair, grabbing his tablet to run simulations. "This could solve our synchronization problem." Across the facility, Dr. Rice was in tense conversation with Ambassador Zin. The Galeri's crystalline form had darkened to a deep indigo, indicating extreme distress. "The Nexus storm has accelerated again," Zin explained, projecting images of their home system. The outermost colony world vanished in a swirl of distorted spacetime as they watched. 3 billion refugees are now crowded on our homeworld, awaiting evacuation. Rice felt her heart sink. "We need more time." The mirror activation sequence requires precise synchronization across all 17 nodes. Without it, the dimensional pocket could collapse catastrophically. "There is something else you must know," Zin said, their form pulsing with hesitation. "The Nexus storm is not merely a natural phenomenon. It adapts." Rice stared at the alien. "Are you saying it's intelligent?" "Not consciousness as you understand it," Zin clarified. "But it exhibits purpose. It actively counteracts defensive measures. This is why our conventional technologies failed." "You withheld this information," Rice said slowly, anchor building despite her exhaustion. "Why?" The alien's form contracted slightly. "The Galeri Council feared humans would refuse assistance if they knew the true nature of our enemy. Our psychological models suggested you would prioritize your own security over helping an alien species face an intelligent cosmic threat." Reyes was about to respond when Ribeiro burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement despite the dark circles under his eyes. "The attackers solved our problem," he exclaimed, holding up his tablet displaying complex synchronization protocols. "Their attempt to link our nodes through quantum entanglement gave us exactly what we needed, a way to ensure perfect timing across all 17 activation points regardless of conventional communication delays." Ray studied the data, momentarily setting aside her anger at the Galeri's deception. This could actually work." She looked up at Zin. "We need to implement this immediately. How much time do we have?" "Less than 15 hours, the ambassador replied gravely. Ribeiro's excitement dimmed. "That's not enough time for conventional implementation." "Then we do it unconventionally," Reyes decided. She activated the global communication system. "Attention all nodes. We have a synchronization solution, but implementation requires unprecedented measures." As she outlined the requirements, responses flooded in from around the world. The Russian team at Node 7 volunteered to manually reconfigure their quantum relays, a process that would expose them to potentially lethal radiation. The Japanese team at Node 3 offered to reroute power from their nation's grid, knowing it would cause widespread blackouts during a typhoon evacuation. In Geneva, Ribeiro watched the responses with wonder. "They're all saying yes, without hesitation." "Of course they are," Reyes said softly. "Because today, nobody wants to be the species that hesitated when everything was on the line." The Russian node facility glowed with an eerie blue light as Colonel Baranov and his team worked amid the exposed quantum relays. Each technician wore minimal protective gear. Full protection would restrict the delicate manipulations required to manually reconfigure the system. 7 minutes until radiation reaches critical levels, announced their medical officer, voice steady despite what the warning meant. At that point, cellular damage becomes irreversible. Baranov nodded without looking up from the crystalline matrix before him. His hands, protected only by thin graphene gloves, adjusted microscopic components with surgeon-like precision. "Tell the families we did this willingly," he said to the officer. "Make sure they understand." Across the world, similar scenes of calculated sacrifice unfolded. In the Brazilian rainforest, engineers rerouted protected environmental power systems, knowing the disruption would damage sensitive ecosystems that might take decades to recover. In Kenya, an entire hospital transferred to emergency generators to direct their power to the local node, medical staff working by flashlight as they moved patients. At Mission Control in Geneva, Dr. Reis monitored these developments with a mixture of awe and guilt. "So much sacrifice," she murmured to Ambassador Zinn, who observed silently beside her. "And we still don't know if it will work." "Why does Colonel Baranov do this?" the Galari asked, their crystalline form pulsing with what humans had come to recognize as profound confusion. "His species has no evolutionary bond with mine. His sacrifice serves beings he has never encountered." Before Reis could respond, Baranov's voice came through the communication system, slightly distorted by radiation interference. "I can hear you, Ambassador," the Russian said, surprising them both. "We do this because today, there is no them, only us, the living against the void." The Galari's form shifted to a hue humans had never observed before. "Your species continually defies predictive models," they noted, their translated voice carrying an unfamiliar harmonic. 14 minutes to global synchronization," announced the system coordinator. "All nodes report ready status." Dr. Reis activated the worldwide broadcast system. Billions watched on screens of all sizes as she addressed humanity. "In moments, we will attempt to create a pocket dimension large enough to shelter the Galari civilization from the Nexus storm. Global power systems will experience significant disruption. Please remain calm and follow emergency protocols." She paused, then added what wasn't in the official script. "Whatever happens, remember this day. Remember what we can achieve when we stand as one species among the stars." The countdown reached 5 minutes when alarms blared through the control center. "Nexus storm acceleration detected," reported the monitoring team. Time frame compressed. Impact with Galari homeworld in 10 minutes, not 15. Zinn's form pulsed with rapid color changes. "Not possible. 9 billion of my people. Initiate emergency synchronization." Reis commanded, her voice cutting through the growing panic. "All nodes activate on my mark." Across 17 locations on Earth, primary systems engage, drawing power from global grids in a precisely orchestrated sequence. Lights dimmed across continents as unprecedented energy was channeled into the quantum mirror network. "Synchronization at 94%, reported the system coordinator. "Need 100% for stable dimensional pocket." In Russia, Colonel Baranov received the alert. "Manual alignment required," he told his team. "We need to hold the quantum state by hand." Without hesitation, they removed their protective gloves to make the necessary microscopic adjustments, directly exposing themselves to the deadly radiation. "Synchronization at 99%, came the update. "One more node." The Brazilian facility reported critical power fluctuations. Young engineer Carla Dias made a split-second decision, physically connecting her station's backup systems directly to the main relay. The resulting power surge would destroy the equipment and likely kill her, but would provide the final energy pulse needed. "For all of us," she whispered, closing the circuit. The quantum mirror activated. Dr. Reis stood before the United Nations General Assembly, her normally pristine uniform wrinkled from days of continuous wear. The chamber was filled beyond capacity, with world leaders, scientists, and ordinary citizens who had contributed to the quantum mirror project. Above them, A holographic display showed the crystalline Galari vessel that had arrived in Earth orbit 12 hours earlier. The final count stands at 9,273,000,000 Galari citizens successfully transported to the pocket dimension, she announced, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. According to Ambassador Zin, that represents 99.7% of their total population. The remaining individuals were exploration teams located beyond their home system. A wave of relieved murmurs swept through the assembly. President Ortiz of the North American Union rose to speak. And the human cost. Reyes swallowed hard before responding. 234 confirmed casualties worldwide. Another 817 suffering from severe radiation exposure or other injuries. Colonel Baranov and 3 members of his team at the Russian node survived, but faced significant medical challenges. Engineer Diaz from the Brazilian facility remains in critical condition. Secretary General Okafor stepped forward. Each name will be remembered in humanity's history as heroes who reached across the stars to save a civilization they had never met. The holographic display shifted to show the spectacular swirl of the Nexus storm consuming what had been the Galari home system. Telescopes had captured the moment when the dimensional pocket had closed, microseconds before the storm engulfed the planet. Within that pocket, an entire civilization continued to exist, preserved in a space that was both nowhere and everywhere. The dimensional bridge remained stable, Rice continued. Our physicists believe it can be maintained indefinitely through the distributed power system. The Galari are not exiles. They are now our closest neighbors, separated only by the thinnest veil of reality. Ambassador Zen's crystalline form materialized on the central platform, colors shifting through patterns humans were only beginning to understand. When we first detected the Nexus storm approaching our system, our most sophisticated models calculated our extinction as inevitable. We approached Earth with minimal hope, seeking to save perhaps a small remnant of our people. The alien paused, their form expanding slightly in what humans had learned was a gesture of profound emotion. Instead, you achieved what our mathematics deemed impossible. You saved not just individuals, but our entire civilization, our history, our art, our future. You did this despite having known of our existence for mere weeks. A side door opened, and 12-year-old Amara Karoma entered, carrying a small crystalline matrix. The girl who had helped solve critical equations now moved with quiet dignity as she presented the object to Secretary General Okafor. This contains the complete knowledge of our civilization, Zin explained. Technologies, sciences, histories, philosophies, everything we have learned across 100,000 years of development. It is yours without restriction or condition. Okafor accepted the gift with visible emotion. We will use this knowledge wisely, Ambassador. We know you will, Zin replied, because we have learned something essential about humanity. You possess a quality our species had optimized away during our evolution toward perfect efficiency, beautiful irrationality. The chamber filled with surprised laughter at this unexpected compliment. Your civilization makes decisions that defy probability, Zin continued. You choose hope when logic dictates despair. You cooperate when game theory suggests competition. You sacrifice for strangers when evolutionary models predict self-preservation. The ambassador's form shifted to a dazzling gold. We offer not just knowledge but partnership. The Nexus storm continues to expand. Other civilizations face extinction. Together, perhaps humans and Galari might save them as well. Dr. Reyes smiled for what felt like the first time in weeks. Ambassador, I believe that's the most human suggestion I've ever heard.